Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, a mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Welcome into another episode of the podcast, listeners. I am so excited to be here with you again, continuing my Enneagram series, all as a fanfare leading up to the workshop I'm doing April 26th here in Denver, live in person. We get to hug each other or shake each other's hands or high five or whatever we want. If you come to that retreat. And gosh darn it. You know what? You've heard me probably, if you've listened to previous episodes, you've heard me before accidentally call this workshop a retreat. Why do I keep doing that? It's actually not a mystery. Two reasons. Number one is at the same time that I'm getting ready for this workshop, I'm also meeting with my retreat alums from last year and getting ready to launch and open up enrollment for this year's retreat. So I've got retreat on the brain. The other reason why is because I have been spending so much time thinking about how I want to run this workshop so that it feels like a little mini retreat, like a little tasting of what it would be like to be on a retreat with me. So, anywho, the workshop is called the Living Enneagram, your personal roadmap. And I am so excited to run it. We're already getting a couple people enrolled. And this is and then this is at the time of me recording this episode, not having released it yet. So even before any of my marketing has gone out for this workshop, I've just gotten a few insiders that have chosen already to enroll. So I'm super excited about that. I have a feeling that it's going to be a lovely, robust group of people just exploring our Enneatypes, going deeper, looking into our personal growth journeys, all of that great stuff. And, I want to put it out there that this workshop is really not parent centered, meaning if you come to this workshop specifically wanting to work on your parenting, fabulous. And if you come to this workshop wanting to learn more about your kids, for example, through the Enneagram, fabulous. But if you come to this workshop and don't even have kids, also fabulous, because we are really looking at the Enneagram, not necessarily parenting with the Enneagram. Although, like I said, that's absolutely one of the things we can explore. The way that the workshop is set up is kind of everyone's on their own personal, self-growth journey. So we do not all have to have the same objective or same goals for what we want to get out of that time together. So if you're curious about that workshop, if you're ready to enroll with me, the link to sign up will be in the show notes and in the video description and all that good stuff. But I'm also going to tell it to you right now. It's bit.ly/living Enneagram. And I cannot wait to see you there. But today, what we're talking about in terms of the Enneagram is the triadic self. That's the fancy Enneagram way of talking about our three centers of wisdom, centers of intelligence that we have, and understanding that depending on what your type is, you fall into one of these triads, and it explains so much about why we do things the way we do and how to do them better, actually. So we're going to talk about all of that stuff. And, just for brief context before I give you my confession, the three triads of the Enneagram are called the gut triad, the head triad, and the heart triad. They also have lots of other names that they'll all refer to the same triadic distribution. So sometimes the head triad is also called the thinking triad, or the gut triad is also called the body triad, or the doing triad. And then the heart triad is also, called the emotional triad, or the feeling triad. So, we'll go into all of that a little bit more. But suffice to say that I, as an Enneatype 1, am in the gut triad. The eights, nines, and ones are gut types. And what that can look like in a lot of ways is impulsivity. So that's my confession for you um, today is because my like primary and dominant center of intelligence is my gut, my intuition. I really make decisions very quickly, and sometimes they are snap decisions. So sometimes I, don't think twice about things. In fact, I would say most of the time I don't think twice. And I would say sometimes I don't even think once. Like, a lot of people knew that we lived for several years in Spain, back before the pandemic. And when people find out that about us, most people ask me, like, how did you decide to do that? Or like, what was the impetus? Like, why did you want to do that? And my answer is kind of usually just, just for adventure. We thought it would be a good experience. This was not something that I spent years and years like planning or weighing my options or doing the pros and cons list at all. It was literally a conversation I was having with one of my best friends who lives in Spain. She was visiting me. We were sitting on the back porch having a glass of wine one afternoon. And, I was like, gosh, I'd really like to get out there, but it's a little bit tricky because of the kids. That's a lot of plane tickets and it's really expensive. It seems almost like a waste to spend that much money just to come, just for a week or 2 weeks or something. And I just flippantly said, it'd be cheaper for us to move there or come for a month than it would for us to go for 2 weeks. And my friend was like, actually, that's true. And then I was like, holy shit. And that was it. That was me making the decision to go to Spain. And then we did. So that is the sort of not thinking twice or even thinking once, you know, way that sometimes a gut type can work. And of course, it looks so different with different flavors and things like that between, the challenger, which is the 8, the peacekeeper, which is the 9, or the reformer, which is me, the 1. Of course, we have our own flavor on that intuitive sort of center of intelligence. And our quote unquote impulsivity will be more or less extreme depending on our instinct stackings and things like that. But in general, the dominant center of intelligence in that gut triad is our gut, it's our intuition. And so a lot of times that does make it easier for us to make decisions. And it can be a detriment, right? Like sometimes it's important for me to think more than once or twice. And it's something I've had to learn and cultivate inside of me over time because it's not my default way of being. So that's what we're going to talk about today is those triads and what we see in those triads. So let's kind of talk about it. So the Enneagram just loves the number 3. There's 9 types. We divide them into 3 triads. There's 3 types in each triad. And then there's a whole other way of dividing the Enneagram into 3 groups of 3 that are called the Hornean groups, but I'm not going to go into that today. But in a future podcast, I am going to talk about it a little bit. But just the number 3 becomes like really prominent in the Enneagram. And so let's talk about these 3 triads, the gut, the head, the heart. And I'm going to start with the gut because almost always when you're doing Enneagram work and we're going around the Enneagram, we usually start with the 8 or the 9, which are in the gut triad. So we'll start with the gut triad and we'll kind of go in a circle. So the gut triad, like I said, is known for, that intuitive center of intelligence. Um, and they look different with each type, right? Also, all the triads are also associated with kind of a core emotion and a core way of being in the world. So the gut triad, because our dominant center is, that intuitive gut center, that also can look like, our way of being is more about doing and acting and taking action than it is about, ruminating or perseverating and stuff like that. The emotion that's associated with the gut triad is anger. And in fact, in some types, the 8s and 1s, especially, that anger, sometimes depending on what book you're reading and what teacher you're following, is referred to as rage, not just anger. And sometimes with eights, that anger comes out as like vindication and sort of like punishment and vindictiveness. In ones, it's more like resentment and frustration. Nines, because they are the repressive in that triad, sometimes they don't associate with anger at all because they have done such a great job of keeping themselves just like still waters and go with the flow. But underneath all of that is sort of this boiling, seething cauldron of frustration and resentment and anger. It's there. And part of the nine's work in becoming more and more healthy is to get in touch with that anger and process that anger and all of those things. So you think about, I hope I'm painting a picture for you. You can think about this sort of way of being in the world, which is like just driven from this like inner driving sort of battery pack that's like, go for it, do it. I just know what's right and what's wrong. If you're a one, or sometimes eights also can be in that sort of like judgment place. I just know what I need to do here. I don't need to think about it. I just do it, right? Or I just feel it, or I just have this inner sense of knowing and all of those things. And so the types, the eight, the nine, and the one, that shows up in different ways, like I said. So with an eight, their vice, for example, is lust. It's that idea of like just wanting to be powerful and strong and resilient and self-sufficient and all of those things. It comes across in this sense of like just gut-driven passion. Um, Nines, they would be associated with the gut more in a sense of right action, which is not their vice, it's their virtue. As they do their work, they move into this place of taking action instead of being stuck in inertia, which is sort of the hard time of the nine, is kind of being stuck in inertia and not taking action, and just maybe having an inner sense of knowing but not being able to act on that inner sense of knowing. But as nines do their work, they move into their virtue of right action, and they become really amazing actors in the world because they have that gut driving their action. And ones are so focused on improving. And so they will just take action to make a situation better. When they see something that needs to be different, this is a silly example of this, but I use this example sort of like the house that I run the retreat in is not in Colorado. It's in Michigan. It's on a lake in northern Michigan and near Traverse City. It is beautiful. And the house used to be my grandmother's house until she passed away. And eventually I'm the one who took over the house. And when I took over the house, I was so excited because for the 20 years previous, where that house had been in our family but not in my control, I would fantasize about exactly what I wanted to do to make the house better. And the second that I got possession of that house, I immediately had everything already figured out of exactly how I wanted to renovate the house, and I just went for it. And I had spent so much time thinking about improving that place that there was not a shadow of doubt in my mind of what needed to happen. And I drastically changed that home. And I've watched people since then, like, friends and relatives and stuff like that, whenever they come to the house and they see it now from before, they are blown away at how different it looks. And I've also watched a lot of people in my life take on renovation projects, and I watch them sort of like almost hold themselves back or overthink the process, because everything that I chose to do, or like when we need to do a really big change in our lives, it's scary. And that's where that whole like look before you leap versus leap before you look thing comes in. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but I want to go through all the triads before I talk about the relationship of them with each other. So that the next one, if we go further down, further around the Enneagram, is the types 2, 3, and 4, which are head types. That's the head triad. Oh, I'm sorry. The heart triad. I misspoke. That's the heart triad. So the heart triad is also called the feeling triad. They're very emotional. They have that connection with their emotions. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you're a 9, a 3, or a um 5 in this triad in these triads that I'm talking about, you might start feeling like, well, I don't do that. I don't, I'm not, like, for example, if you're a 3, it would be very normal for you to think like, I'm not emotional at all. Like I half the time I don't even know what I'm feeling. It's because in each triad there is one type that represses their emotions, and the 3 is the repressive type in in the heart triad. So it makes perfect sense for a 3 to feel like, well, I'm not super emotional at all. And for a 9 to feel like I don't feel anger. I'm not an angry person. No one would describe me that way. That can happen absolutely with the repressive type in each triad. But let's get deeper with the heart here. So that emotional piece of the puzzle is in this triad. And the emotion that's most associated with the heart triad is shame. Sometimes it's also experienced as sadness, loss, or grief. Especially type 4s usually resonate more with a feeling of loss or something missing than they do with shame necessarily. But so we can imagine this type who is really, really has the potential to be really, really great at being aware of their emotions, processing their emotions, letting their emotions inform their decisions, and really being moving from that place of emotional intelligence. And that's that heart triad, right? And when we look at the different types, the 2, I mean, we can see it so clearly with the 2. The 2 is sometimes called the helper. They just are the empaths of the Enneagram. They feel everybody else's emotions, especially negative emotions, as if they were their own, and they feel responsible for everyone's emotions. They want everyone to feel, taken care of, not just taken care of, but taken care of by them. The way that they feel that sense of connection and rightness in the world is by being helpful and indispensable to the people they love. And in order to be effective at that help, they need to be able to know what the people they love are feeling. And it is very tangible with a 2, the way that they tune into the emotions of the people around them. 3s, the way that you can see emotion with 3s is in their vice and virtue. So 3s care a lot about being seen as successful. So in order to be seen as successful, they do have to be good at understanding, well, what does this person that I'm dealing with right now perceive as success or achievement? I need to know that. I need to be aware of that. The 3s vice is vanity because they care so much about that image, right? And their virtue is honesty. When they move into their virtue, they become, instead of that chameleonic way of being pleasing and impressive to the people around them, they instead are honest with themselves and the world around them in that super heart-based way. And 4s, their sort of heart intelligence or emotional intelligence is so evident in their tapping into beauty and creativity and melancholy in the world around them. So when you're around a 4, even when they're happy, there's a touch of sadness you can feel. And a lot of times people are like, oh, well, that's so awful for a 4. But it's really, especially for a healthy 4, it's not. It is something that allows them to fully appreciate and take in and bring forward the beauty of the world, is being able to also embrace the shadow side of the world, their own shadow side. That's why I like the word melancholy over sadness when I talk about a 4, because there's something beautiful and bittersweet about embracing that darkness and that dark side that we have inside of us. And that's where a 4 shows so clearly that they are in that heart triad. And I also, with the heart triad, and this is not the same with the other 2, it's specific to the heart triad. The heart triad is sometimes also called the image triad, or the types that are in that triad are sometimes called image types, because they really care about how they're seen. 2s want to be seen as helpful. Threes want to be seen as successful, and fours want to be seen as important, significant, or special. And so there is also, if you're thinking about if I'm an image type, that means that I really need to be thoughtful about how the world sees me. And in order to actually successfully do that, I need to be aware of how I'm being seen. I need to be aware of and capable of connecting with not just my own emotions, but the emotions of other people. So it's so interesting that that emotional triad is also the triad that is so image conscious. So strange, but when you think about it a little bit further, it makes sense. So let's move more into the head triad now for real. I'm not misspeaking this time. So five, sixes, and sevens are head types. And what that means is they are the thinking triad. They live in their minds in beautiful, great strategic ways, and also in sort of a little bit of a mind palace where they are sort of in their heads a lot, right? So how does that look with the three types? With fives, you can see it so clearly with them in both of those ways, actually. Fives are incredibly good at being prepared, gathering information, synthesizing information into complex systems or solutions. A lot of people who are engineers are fives, because that engineering skill set is absolutely aligned with a five strengths. And fives often are a little bit disconnected from the world around them because they're so in their own heads. They're sort of in that sort of preparing and synthesizing and gathering information place. And so, when you think of like the eccentric genius or something like that, that's a five. And so, I mean, obviously the connection to the head and the mind is so clear right there. Sixes are in their heads in the sense that they are making contingency plans all the time. They're thinking about what could go wrong, and they're making plans to protect themselves from what would go wrong. Sixes are really great to have in your life because they can surface risks that you might not be aware of. If I had had a six helping me make my decision about going to Spain, I probably would have thought twice. I wouldn't have thought zero times. And that six might have helped me, say, well, these are some things to be mindful because that could be an issue while you're in Spain, and maybe you should be thoughtful about those things. And that would have been really great for me. So sixes thinking comes out in their, contingency planning and everything like that. And sevens, their vice is actually planning. They get into planning for the future because they're so thoughtful about what is the best way for me to maximize and take the biggest bite possible out of life. And so, in order to do that, they have to be in that planning place. And now that I've described all three of these types, oh, one more thing about the head type. Their core emotion is worry and fear, which makes sense, right? If you're always thinking about and preparing for and thinking about what could go wrong and things like that, of course you're going to be worried. So, not that all nine types can experience anxiety for a myriad of reasons, but the head triad is most associated with anxiety. And of the head triad, the six is most of all associated with anxiety or worry. So now that you've heard these three triads, you can think about another thing that's associated with each triad, which is their place in time. And what I mean by that is that gut triad is much more in the present, which is why it's possible for them to just make a decision and follow their gut without worrying about what the future holds or, what the past taught them or whatever. They just are in the moment and they can do it and they can feel it. Sometimes they can't do it, especially for a nine. It's tricky, but they can feel it. The head type is in the future. They're planning, they're problem solving, they're worrying about what could happen, they're preparing and creating something new with that synthesis ability of the five. And the heart is in the past. They're thinking about and experiencing the pain of what they've had happen to them, or the pain that they see in front of them, or the desire they see in front of the emotions they see in front of them. So there can be a little bit of a backward gaze in that heart triad. So you can see these three triads. The last thing I want to say about the triads before I move into sort of bringing it all together is I think that, well, I don't think this, I know this, and I'm sure all of you know this too. First of all, we all have these centers of intelligence. It's not like because I'm a gut triad, I don't have a brain or I don't have emotions. It's just that's my strongest, my default place that I start from is my gut. So we all have all three of these. In our society, especially, there's an over reliance on the head. So each of these three things has their place. And in order for us to be kind of growing and our best selves, we need to be using all three of these centers. But what I think we do, especially in a Western society, is we try to use our head for everything. And that doesn't work. So let's think about that. When I was talking about being a gut type, that inner knowing and being able to make a decision and take action, that's where we want to use our gut. When we use our head to make decisions, what happens most of the time is we get stuck in analysis paralysis. And if you're a head type, you probably are nodding along right now, like, heck yeah, that happens to me. And when I work with sevens and sixes, especially, there is just a ton of that sort of hamster wheel of thinking and thinking and thinking, and then talking yourself out of taking action or talking yourself into confusion so that you can stay confused and not make a decision and that kind of stuff. When we are making a decision, it's so much better for us to be in that leap before you look mindset. And once you've made the decision, now your head and your heart are going to be your places that are going to be the best implementers. Your head is there for implementing this decision that you've made, problem solving when things go wrong, executing this amazing decision that you've made and creating the plan for it, dealing with logistics. You want to use your magnificent brain after you've made a decision to really make your decision or your ambition or your goal become a reality. And your heart is kind of there. I picture it almost as like your Sherpa along the way, supporting you, helping you deal with what's happening as go forward with this goal and helping you, actually experience and enjoy the thing that you're doing. But in our society, we try to use our head for everything, and it's just not the right tool for all of these things. We use our head to rationalize our emotions instead of processing our emotions. We use our head to make decisions instead of using our gut to make decisions. And so we really can't see the forest for the trees when we're up in our head all the time. So there's a whole school of thought that this guy, George Ivanovich Gurdjieff, who was the person who originated the Enneagram, he talked a lot about the fourth way, or sometimes he would just call it the work. And the fourth way is to utilize all three of your intelligence of centers of intelligence. Get into your gut, to get into your heart, to get into your mind so that you can utilize all three of those. And now you are living in this fourth way. And so I'm going to leave you with just some advice on like actually how to do that. If you want to get into your gut, or sometimes we'll say get out of your head and into your body, use your body, move your body, and use mindfulness tools. Now, remember, that's not the same as meditation. Mindfulness is literally body awareness. It keeps you in the present. So think about that. If you want to start utilizing your heart more, get into that emotional intelligence. Meditation and even prayer is really helpful with that. Feel your emotions and actually stay with them instead of avoiding them. Notice when your mind is trying to distract you from your feelings or just tell you, like, well, I don't know. Like, I have a client right now who I'm fairly certain is a 7. We haven't confirmed that yet. And whenever I ask him these head scratcher questions, he's just like, I don't know. It's a mystery. I'm still working on it. And that's it. It's because in order if for him to actually sit with that question and answer it, it would bring up a lot of emotion for him. So really sit with that. Sit in your discomfort is my advice when you want to get into your heart. And to get into your head, the honest truth is you probably don't need any help getting into your head. But if you're really trying to use your head in a much more effective way, instead of being in that sort of perseveration and rumination place, journal. So you hear that there are 3 different tools I'm suggesting to you: mindfulness for the body, meditation or prayer for the heart, and journaling for the mind. And when you journal, start with the assumption that whatever it is you're journaling about, it is possible. So if it's possible for me to spend the summer with my mother without feeling angry at her, how might it be possible? And all of a sudden, your amazing creative thinking mind is going to go into overdrive and you'll be amazed at what you come up with. So, those are the three centers. I give you a tiny little tidbit of that fourth way. And if you want to go further with that, I better see you on the 26th. bit.ly/living Enneagram. And I can't wait to see you on the 26th. Bye, everybody.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.